fight if we must. Caesar loved humans more than apes, more than your sons. Apes win war. Apes together strong. Caesar weak. Koba weaker.
Caesar is perhaps the best film protagonist of the past few decades. His character arc throughout the Rise, Dawn, and War trilogy is phenomenal, and I equally think that Koba is one of the most iconic and complex villains of this same time period. And getting to see these two incredible characters develop, grow, and ultimately collide with one another was fascinating to watch unfold, so let's analyze it. We don't get to see too much interaction between Caesar and Koba in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but the important thing that was established in this film is that Koba was only shown humanity's dark and vicious side. Koba bears scars from what humans did to him and knows only hatred and mistrust for mankind. But Caesar, while he did encounter some of the worst of humanity, also experienced loving kindness from Will and his family. So he has a more nuanced understanding of people and the positive and negative aspects of mankind. Caesar understands that there are kind people, and not all of humanity is hatred incarnate. After a 10-year time jump between Rise and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, we see a fully functioning family of apes, headed by Caesar, having grown and developed as a tribe of sorts over the past decade. And we also see that Koba doesn't hesitate to come to Caesar's aid when Caesar's son is attacked by a grizzly bear. Koba acknowledges that Caesar is the reason that he is free and no longer being experimented on or tortured by humans. But as we get further into the film, we realize that Koba cares for himself above all else. Yes, he's loyal to Caesar because he helped Koba, but this does not mean he will blindly follow Caesar. And after discovering new humans, Koba of course wants to fight. He views humans as only having the capacity for violence, and wants to beat them to the punch. Koba also tries to rally support from other apes, pointing out that the man they found shot and injured Ash. But Koba ultimately gets stonewalled because the apes support and follow Caesar, and Caesar doesn't want to go to war because it would jeopardize everything they've built, their home, and their future. And while this scene does end with Caesar and Koba locking arms, we can start to see the rift between the two developing. And this is further highlighted when the apes confront the humans at the gates of their city. Caesar proclaims, "Apes do not want war, but will fight if we must." So while it's clear that Caesar wants to show strength, he also views war as the worst case scenario, wants to avoid conflict and the death of any apes. But you can tell from the look in Koba's eyes that he does not share Caesar's sentiment. Koba wants all humans to perish as retribution for the atrocities committed against him, and he doesn't particularly care how many apes die in his path for revenge. Caesar and Koba's argument over whether or not they should allow Malcolm and crew to work on the dam to restore limited power further increases the rift between the two. Koba thinks the humans will become even more dangerous if they gain power, while Caesar thinks they're desperate and need help. And this is the big distinction between the two. Koba views weakness as a sign to strike, while Caesar views it as a sign to help. And this ultimately goes back to their past experiences with humans, as Koba only knows their bad side, but Caesar wants to believe there are others like Will out there. It's also interesting to think that Caesar essentially wants to do for the humans what he did for his fellow apes in the previous film. He saw that apes were physically trapped behind bars and mentally trapped in a lower state of consciousness, so he freed them. And he wants to do the same for the humans, in giving them limited electricity. But Koba, now that the shoe is on the other foot, wants to decimate and crush mankind. And once Koba realizes how many guns the humans have stored in their armory, his desire to eradicate them only increases. And upon returning to the apes' home, Koba finds humans still working on the dam, which pisses him off. He screams and demands to see Caesar, which is when Koba proclaims that Caesar loves humans more than apes. more than your sons. And this sparks a big ol' physical altercation between the two. But Caesar stops himself from killing Koba because of his cardinal rule: ape, no kill ape. But Koba does not hold this rule in such regard. Koba wants his revenge against mankind, and he'll do whatever he must to attain it, no matter how many dead humans or apes are left in his path. And this is seen shortly after, as Koba takes a gun, shoots Caesar with the aim of killing him, and pins it on the humans in order to start all-out war. And perhaps the best scene in the entire film, after Caesar has recovered from his gunshot wound, he confronts Koba in front of all their fellow apes, and as the two debate, Koba increases the volume of his voice to portray himself as the stronger of the two. Koba loudly proclaims, "Apes win war. Apes together strong." But Caesar talks at a consistent volume throughout, almost as if he's penetrating Koba's soul. And as Caesar says, "Koba, weaker," he looks at Koba's gun, which sparks Koba to do the same, and you can tell that Koba knows Caesar is correct. The fact that he needed a gun and the element of surprise in order to get the better of Caesar causes Koba to throw his gun away and fight one-on-one out of pride. This all leads us to the final moment where Caesar has the option to save Koba or to let him drop to his death. And despite Caesar's cardinal rule of never killing an ape, Caesar comes to understand that being an ape is more than just DNA. It's how you act and hold yourself. And Koba is no longer an ape. Koba's path for revenge against humanity began because they shot Ash, only for Koba to kill Ash himself later in the film. Koba truly lost what it meant to be an ape, and only his need to kill humanity truly mattered to him in the end. Whereas, Caesar in War for the Planet of the Apes shows an ability to let go of his past and let go of the vengeance in his heart. He had the Colonel, the man who killed his wife and son, and physically tortured Caesar, right in front of him with a pistol pressed against his temple. Yet he was able to stop himself from killing him in anger, showing the key difference between Caesar and Koba. Because ultimately, Koba couldn't overcome his past of being tortured by humans, and let his rage and anger dictate his life. And not being able to let go of his past ultimately forced Caesar to let go of Koba. All in all, I love the dynamic between Caesar and Koba in this trilogy, primarily in Dawn, as it highlights two understandable opinions on mankind, largely fueled from past lived experiences, and I enjoy that their final fight largely mirrors their ideologies, as Caesar is on the defensive most of the fight, and Koba is swinging wildly and is far more aggressive, in classic Koba fashion. If you made it this far, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this analysis, please feel free to like or subscribe. And remember, this is just my take on things, so if you agree, disagree, or just have general thoughts on Caesar or Koba, as always, I love to hear you in the comments.